Alright, guys. Welcome to week 5 of our free Node.js class. This is week 5, Saturday, and we'll be integrating Redis into our system. But first, we'll have to walk through the code base so that we'll get familiar with the whole backend system. Then after that, we'll integrate Redis for caching, and they will now dockerize the application. So let me share my screen, then I'll do some explanation before we continue. Okay, so can you see my screen? Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Alright, we are quite few today, just the two of you. Wow. Let me drop the notification here. Alright guys, so basically what we have now is a complete working Node.js Express application, right? Backend application. So if you are familiar with this code base, automatically you are now a backend developer. You are a confident backend, you are now a confident backend developer, right? You can spin up your backend application, write your API calls and the rest. Okay, so from now on, after I've walked us through the whole code base, whatever we're going to be doing from then upward is it's not merely about building it's not on building the API anymore, right? Because you already know how to build it. So whatever we're going to be learning, the Docker, the Redis, the Kafka that we're going to be doing, right, is based on now optimizing your application. But because it's not enough to just build the application, right? The next step we're going to be doing now is the next technologies we're going to be learning is to optimize and make your application scalable, high performance, reliable, and the rest, portable also. You understand? So basically everything we're going to be learning now is how to optimize your application, because it's not, like I said, it's not enough to just build the application and put out there. What if when your application starts getting heavy loads, right? Maybe you built an application for, let's say, 1,000 users, then after like some months your users increase to like 10,000, 100,000. Your application would it be able to handle such load when when they start getting that kind of traffic? So basically that's what we are going to be teaching us. These technologies, that's what they are used for, right? We're going to be discussing Redis. Redis is for caching, right? I'm going to demonstrate the importance of what it does, like basically what it does on caching, and the effects. You're going to see the effects it has when you cache an API, right? Then we are going to dockerize it. Docker is for portability. Like there are sometimes when you build an application, you rebuild an application, your local machine, everything is working perfectly well. But when you deploy to the cloud, deploy to the server, or you give your partner import the code into that system, and they try to run it, or the cloud try to deploy it, you start getting issues due to dependencies and the rest, dependencies of packages and the rest. So when Docker helps us to solve that kind of problem, so that when you build the application, you dockerize it, you can take it anywhere and run and execute the application, right? Please, if you want to come attention, let me know. If I start sharing screens, I don't usually. Alright, if you want to come attention, just unmute and speak so that I can hear you. Clive, you have a question?
Yes.
Alright.
I wanted on this project.
Yeah.
I saw that you used Postman for testing APIs.
Yes.
Is that correct? So I
Yeah.
was asking what any difference between, because in some projects such as Java, I've been learning Java, so it has been using Swagger. I don't know if Node.js also allows to use Swagger.
Yeah. You can use Swagger. You can use Swagger.
So Swagger is the same, works the same, almost the same as Postman,
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
there are different.
No, they are not different. They are both for documentation of your API and for testing your APIs. So they are not different. They are the same thing. In fact, why I didn't incorporate Swagger here, we're going to do that in Nest.js. Nest.js comes by default Swagger. They integrated Swagger into Nest.js so that when you build your application, you just easily wire up Swagger documentation and testing on it. All right, but Express does not have something like that. That's why I decided to use Postman for us. Postman is very popular. Every backend developer knows Postman, right? So it's the same thing, no difference.
Okay,
All right, guys.
thank you.
So yeah, you're welcome. So let's go. Let's walk through our code, please. Let's walk through our code, like we have here. If I run our application, everything is running perfectly. The front end is here. I don't want to go through the front end. I won't be explaining anything on the front end. So let's just go through what we have here. So if you look at the modules that we have, we'll be paying attention to the modules because this is where our business ideas lies, right? Modules are basically the features of our applications, right? So we have the auth, that's the authentication module. We have the comment module. We have the post module. We have the users module, right? So basically these four modules. Now, these four modules are related in the sense that authentication and users module are related because we use user service. We use some of users item on authentication module, right? I'm going to see that in a few minutes. Posts and comments are related, right? Because every post every comment has a post that is attached to. There's no standalone comments. Nobody can just go and create comments. All right, you must create comment under a post. All right. So we use some items, some post items in comments. So we're going to see that in demonstration. So I think I'm going to start with the auth endpoint because it's very important. I deal with that. So every of our modules has three. No, basically it has five. Sorry, has five sub modules, sub directories, right? So we have services, routes, entities, DTOs, and controllers, right? Let me explain what they do individually. Controllers actually is the forefront, is what interacts with the routes, right? Let me start with routes. Route is where we define the routing of our endpoints, like if you what paths we call our endpoints, right? Basically that's what route does. Then we integrate route with controllers. So if you go into route, you're going to see all the controllers we define for our project, right? If you go to route, you're going to see controllers inside the project because when we define our routes, we wire controllers into it. All right. So what does controller do? Controller is where we accept the request. The request that is coming in from the route is where in controller we receive that request. Whatever the user is sending into the system, it's in controller we collect everything. When we collect it, we process it. And how do we process it? To process whatever controller has received, we call services. We use services to process, to do anything we want to do, right? Services directory is where we have our business logic. This is the business logic of our application. Services, right? Any logic, anything you want to define for a business is under services, right? So I've explained services, routes, controllers, right? So route is where we define the particular route, like the /users/auth of our application, of our module, right? right? That's the route our module is going to be accessed from. Then controllers are integrated into routes, because it's in controller we handle the request that is coming in. So anything the user is sending into our application, we receive them from controllers. Then when we receive them, to process whatever we receive from the user, we use services to process those things. All right. So after that, then we are good. Now, what are DTOs and entities? These are kind of data typing, right? What do I mean? DTOs are like, we use it to filter whatever the user is sending, right? Is sending into our application through the controller. Like if we say the user should send email and password, and the email will be a string of type email, and the password will be a string. Now the DTO will help us to define it that, okay, email is a string, password is a string. If the user sends a number in place of email, the DTO will help us to filter it, that no, we don't want a number for email, we want a string for email. You understand? So that's basically what DTOs do, right? That's basically what they do. The entities are like what we model our database. Entities are like, is what we are storing in our database, the type of things we're storing in our database. Are we storing IDs, text and number, post ID and the rest? Everything, how we want to store it on the database is we kind of model it into our entities, so that when our application is interacting with our database, it will know the kind of typings it expects from database. All right, so that's just a general overview. Let's dive in directly now. So authentication module does not have entities, because we are actually interacting with the user's service and everything about user. So let's go to the routes. So starting from here, right, this is the most important thing here. The most important, you have to create a router object, and router is from Express, right? You import it from Express. Here, this is how you import from Express. If you import, right, this is Express default. You understand? You guys understand? You remember how I taught you about named export and default import, named import and named export, and default import and default export. So basically, this router is a named import because it is exported as a named export, while this Express is a default export import here, because it's imported as a default, it is exported as a default export from Express, right? So but we don't need Express here, we already have it in our application. So I am only importing router here because I want to use it to define route for the authentication module, right? So after importing here, let's ignore every other thing here first. When I import the router, I create an object of it, which is router. Then I come here, I do route.post or route.get, anything I want to define. Now I'm not defining the method, the HTTP method of any part I want to define for authentication. Right here now I define route.post and I gave it a path. When you do the route.post and any route, when you define the method, you give it a path first. The path is what you first give it. Then let's ignore these two items. Let's ignore them for now. Then I come here, this is the controller. I initialize the controller class, right? I first import the controller class. Then when I import it, I initialize it, right? Since I create a class, an instance of it, then I attach it to the router. So what this is doing is that it's telling this application that when a user access router and the method is post, this controller method that I defined here is going to be the handler. It's going to handle it. It's going to handle whatever is being sent on this path. So when that is done, the method will be called and everything. So the same thing happens for the login, right? The same thing happens for the login. When you call the login endpoint of post method, the login method. This is the login method. This dot bind is kind of, I will explain that probably later. Then this method that is called. Okay, so basically this is how the controller is tied to the router, to the routes. All right, so now this register validator validates entity methods here are basically what will I call them? They are called validators. Okay, they are called validators. What they do is that they help to check. Okay, let's go to the class here. Let's go to the now. They help us to when you are, if you see here, we imported there's when we are installing this project, we installed Express Validator, and we use it to validate the type of request that is coming in from the user, like I said earlier. So if you look at this this register validator here, when we want to sign up, if I go to my Postman, here, all right, register, this is our Postman, the documentation and everything for the APIs. So here, this is where we the body tab is where we add information to register. So here now we specify email to be string, name to be string, password also to be string, right? So when we send this request, it gets, when it hits our application, it will first meet this register validator here, because if you check this our route here, this our route endpoint, if you check this, the flow is that when when the request gets here, right, if you check our routes here, this is our route slash register, this auth will show us where we attach this auth, but let's pay attention to this slash route, and the method is post. Now when whatever we send to that endpoint, it gets to this place. Before it gets to the register, it will first pass through these two items here. They are called middlewares in Express.js. They are called middlewares. Middlewares are like they are methods or functions that are kind of executed in the middle during the request response cycle of your request in Express.js. So when the request is coming in to get to the handler, the request handler, the controller is actually the request handler here. So when the request is coming in to move from where it gets when it gets received to the request handler, which is the register method on the controller here, it has to pass through this validator, register validator, and validates before it gets to it. So if there's any issue between these two, it's going to bounce back, like we're going to throw an error to the user that okay, we did not, your request is not proper, we need to validate, it's not well validated, right? So basically that's the validator here that we have. You must validate whenever you are receiving inputs that you need to store on the database. You must validate it so that you not get hackers will not be able to hack your system, and your system will not be vulnerable to users. So you need to validate it. If you want string from users, it should be string. Right, so that means let's go to the function and see and look properly again what they actually is, what they actually are. Sorry. So if we come here again, so this is how we validate for this package here. This is how we use this package Express-validator. This is how we use it. You just define a variable, and it's going to be an array. This is basically an array. Then inside the array, you now because we are expecting the request in body, like if you look at this the Postman, this is body, and the format is JSON, raw JSON, right? The data is in the body object of our request. So because we are expecting the information in the body object, so we're going to use body here, imported from Express Validator. So when we do that, the items here that we're going to supply is going to basically reflect the same thing with whatever we define here, right? This email, name, password must be the same with what we have here. So this, what it does now, this express validator, we know that okay, when it receives the body, it will be looking for name, email, and password. All right. So when it does that, then it starts validating. It will check is string. This is string is like checking, is it a string? Then if it's a string, then this with message is like and a default an error, meaning that if it check this name in the body object and it is not a string, if it is not a string, then whenever it throws an error, it will throw an error with this message, with message name must be string. All right, let's just test this out so that you guys will see it. Let's say in name here I put, let me put number here, or if I put an array here and send it, you're going to see the validation. Okay, look at it here. So it throws 400 bad request error. Yeah, that's a conventional error, bad request. And it says the type is field, the value, like this is what I supplied, right? This is what it gave me. Yeah. Then the message name must be a string. The path is name, which is this name here. Then the location is body, which is this body, right? So basically this is how it does its validation, right? So that is what the express validator does. Right, so that's what it do for the express here. So the same thing happens for every other one. Likewise for login, it happens the same way. Then what does this is what we just discussed. And what does this do? This is actually where whatever the error is from this place, this one we handle it and format it. The message you saw on Postman was actually formatted from on this validate method here. Let's check it. This is it here. It's very important. Right. So this is the method here. So when it received the error message, now we have to import. It's from the same express validator, right? From the same express validator, we have to import the validation results. So the validation results, we give it a request. Like I told you, in Express, middlewares are usually like has three inputs: request, response, and next, right? So when we do that, when we define it, this validation result will receive the request. When it receives the request, it will now check for errors, because that's the first middleware. This first middleware here must have compiled the errors that it has picked from the request. Then when the request is now getting into the validate method, it's this validation result, we know how to extract the errors from it. Then after extracting the errors, it will check if there's no error, right? If there's no error, nothing will happen. It will just go to the next just go to the next cycle, the next step. But if there's an error, to throw this error, that's the error we got, right? The message we got on Postman, is actually here, formulated from this place. Sorry. It's actually formulated from this place, right? So basically that's what these two items do for this register route. So basically the same thing happens here. If we go to login validator, the same thing, the same logic and everything, to check if there's an error, it will throw you an error, right? So that's basically that's what we have in the router, in the route authentication route file. Then this service authentication and auth controller methods that we import are actually, we just need to instantiate our controller, right? I hope you guys are familiar with this. Our controller takes service, authentication service, as a dependency, right? It takes that as a dependency. So whenever we are initializing the authentication controller class, we need to give it a service instance also. So to instantiate our service, all right, we also need user. Need the user service. All right, so we're going to see this when we start going to those classes. So that we give it to the user service. Also, to instantiate the user class, we need the pool, the database pool, because the user service connects with the database directly. So this user service is from the user module. Like I told you guys that the authentication module uses the user module, user service also. So let's go to now. We have discussed the route. We'll go to controller. From controller, we'll go to service. Then from service, you can from controller we also look at DTOs. Then after looking at DTOs, we look at service. Then from service, we look at the okay, there's no entity. I think that they will go to the next post. So let's go to alt controller. Guys, I don't know, am I making sense? If I'm not making sense, please let me know. I need you guys to understand the flow. If I'm not making sense, let me know, please. Hello guys, hope I'm making sense to you. And we'll go on a break. Today we'll go on a break so that we'll not be too overwhelmed. Alright, so then we are now in the in the alt controller class. Alright, so the alt controller class, like I told you, it takes the authentication service as a dependency. That's in its constructor. It takes authentication service. So when we want to initialize our authentication controller, we must give it an authentication class. So we now define the method. This is the register method I showed us that handles the request when it comes in. Then this is also the login method that handles the login. Right, so this is what I told you, that this is where we receive the request. Right, this is the request and this is the response of the request of the application that's coming in. Right, so this is where we receive when we receive the request, we now extract the body. Right, this body here is this information here in the body. Right, this is the body, raw JSON. Right, this is the body here. This information we sent, all this information here. This is where we access them. Right, this request.body, we extract all those information, the email, the name, and the password. Right, now you see here there's what we call as register GTO. Right, in TypeScript, as is kind of like a typecasting, kind of telling TypeScript that okay, this body is having a type of this. Right, let me show another example. Like if I do something like if I say name and I do, let me give it union type. Union type, if you remember, union type is when you assign more than one type to a variable. Right, so this is basically union type. I want to demonstrate what this has to do. This is basically union type. Right, so what it means is that name can either be a string or a null. Right, so basically now I initialize null to name, so now name is null. Right, so if I let's say I want to do name dot to lowercase. Now you see TypeScript is telling me that name is possibly null. Name is possibly null because name has two nature. It can be string or it can be a null. Right, but if I do something like if I do something like this now, it will work because I have now typecast name to be string. So name is now a string, and I can now use the uppercase because this is a string method. This is a method that is on string, it's not on null. So if we try to apply this method on a null variable, TypeScript is going to complain, right? So basically, this is what that ask keyword do, right? So we are telling TypeScript that this body is going to we are typecasting it to the register DTO. So basically, what it means is that we will be able to do, if you see, we're able to do something like data.email, right? Also, we can do data.name because they are what exists in the body object, and DTO also tells us something like that. If you check the DTO, the register DTO, we use class here, and we had to use this exclamation marks here to define them. Actually, we can also do this with interface. We can actually do this with interface if we want, right? You can actually do it with interface, but I decided to use class here because of Next.js, we're going to be importing our codes too. That's why I use that. I use a class. So if I remove this here, sorry, if I remove this here, right, basically, so right, so now we have extracted the body and we have put it in a data object, data variable. So now we can now give it to our authentication service from here, this authentication service to use, and the method we give it to is the register method, right? So this is where we are trying to register the user. So the authentication method will register the user, do everything for the application for us. Then it will return a response. Then we will check whether the operation was successful or not. If it is successful, we return a success message. If it is not, we throw an error. All right. And one of the errors we expect from this controller is when the email that the user is trying to register with has been taken. All right. So this is what the register method of the authentication controller class do. All right. So next we're going to be looking into the authentication service. But let's look at the login also. Hello guys, is my network cutting off? All right. So coming into the login also, almost the same thing. The same thing happens for the login. So almost the same method. You receive the body, which is we reference it as the DTO, the email and password. Then when we do that, we extract the data from the body. Then we give the data to the authentication service of the login method. The login method of the authentication service. Then we give it. Then when it returns a result to us, we check. If there's no result, we throw an error, right? But if there's a result, we send information to this client. So basically, this is the authentication controller, right? The authentication controller. We look at the register method and the login method, which we use them here. This is where we use them in the routes, right? We use them here and we use them here. So we know what these two are, right? This login validator and validate. We know what they are. So now let's move on to the authentication service next, right? The authentication service. Let's go into it here. So this is the authentication service because it was imported from the services authentication .service or .service. So the two methods that are called in the controller also are register and login, same name, right? So this is where we do our business. This is where your business, all your code, because basically when you're developing, building your application, your controller should be minimum, like should be very 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 like, you shouldn't write too much code in your controller methods, right? You should not write any code, like many code. The job of the controller is just to take the request, give it to the service, take response from the service, and return the response to the route, right? That's basically what the controller does. It doesn't do any thinking, logic, anything. No, it shouldn't be doing it, right? If I have the chance, I would have even make this register method more leaner, right? So that's that. Then in your service is where you do all your logic, all the calculation, all the whatever you need to do. This is where you have the opportunity to do it. So now what does the authentication service do? Also, it takes there are two methods here, although there are other methods, other private methods, but the public methods here are register and login. We have the other private methods are like helper methods that we call. We use them in the login and in the login methods. So for the register method, right, still we give it the data it received is of type register DTO, right? Then we define a method, a return type, right? So we use promise here. Anytime where we use promise, anytime you have your method as async, yeah. If your method is async, when you are defining a return type, it must be in promise. You must use promise, because if you don't use promise, TypeScript will complain that because your function is an async function, the return type is a promise of of the data type that you want to return. Alright, basically we are returning a user type or an undefined type, and they must be wrapped in promise. So that's why I use promise here, right? Even the same here, I use promise because everything is async type. There are some methods that I didn't define the return type, so but they are cool. It's okay if you didn't define the return type, right? So now here, this is where in the register method, after receiving the data, I had to destructure out the variables, the data information I received. Then after destructuring them out, I now call the user service. I told you guys that we use a user service in our auth service here, right? Because they are connected, right? So the user service is a dependency of the auth service. It's received, the auth service takes it in its controller, and we use it here. So to create the user, we call the auth service, and we call the create user method in the auth the user service. Sorry, yeah, we pass it the name, the email, and the password. Right, when after we pass it, then we wait for a response. It returns the registered user to us. Then after returning it, we will now the authentication service will now return the register method will now return the registered user. So basically this is just straightforward. Then login, the login method of the authentication service. Then first, what do we do here? It received the email and password. It needs to log in the user. Right now, it has to take some steps before basically the aim of the login service, of the login method, is to authenticate the user. After authenticating the user, it generates the access token that the user is going to be using to access the application. It creates the access token. Actually, it creates two tokens: access token and refresh token. This method is very popular, using access token and refresh token for your authentication in your system. It's a popular method because this is the idea here. The access token is when you generate the access token. These tokens are JWT, JSON Web Token, right? When you create them, you give them time in the expire. You give them time to expire, right? So when users are using them to make requests, if it expires, they can't use it again to make requests. They need to relog in, right? So basically that's the idea. So the tokens expire, and it depends on the time you give them to expire. That's in your application. When you give them some time and that time reach, that time it gets to that time, they will expire, and the user will need to relog in again to be able to get a new access token and use. Now this access token and refresh token Access token is the one that is used on every request. When the user is making the request, use it. Access token is the one you use every time. Refresh token is just there. When you create for the if the front end is integrating the system, it's going to take the when they log in, it's going to take the access token and refresh token. It will store the access token, the refresh token somewhere, then be using the access token to be making requests, right? When the access token expires, because access token now, the two timing are different. Access token expires very easy, quickly, like in minutes, like 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It expires every now and then. Access token, right? But refresh token expires long. Like some people give it like 7 days, some give it 30 days for the refresh token to expire, right? So what it means is that when the access token expires, the front end will have to send the refresh token. Then when the refresh token is sent to the backend, the backend will take the refresh token, validate it, and use that refresh token and generate a new access token and send it back to the front end. So it will send the access token back to the front end, the new access token, and also the refresh token, send it to the front end. Then the front end will start using the new access token and be making calls. Anytime it expires, it will send back the refresh token to get a new access token. I don't know if I'm making sense. Then when this is done, then at the end of the day, when the refresh token expires or maybe it gets invalidated, the user will need to now log in again to get the new access token and refresh token fresh, right? So basically this is the idea. Then the when you are building your logic for this kind of notification system, you have to create an endpoint that you call it slash maybe refresh token. See, so you have your login endpoint like slash register or slash login endpoint. Also you need to have your slash refresh endpoint. That slash refresh endpoint is where when the access token expires, the front end will call that slash refresh token endpoint to now get a new access token, right? That endpoint will take the refresh token. You supply the refresh token the client will supply the refresh token to that endpoint. Then when the backend will take it and authenticate it and create a new access token for it. So basically this is what we are doing here. So we have two methods here. Create access token, create a fresh token, right? They take the valid user. Now when the request comes in, we take the email and password. We first check if the email and password are correct, right? This is what this method do. Validate credentials. Now let's go to validate credential. What does it do? Okay, so it takes email and password, it gets the user, right? We use the user service, then try to get the user by email. Now search the database to get the user. Then if it sees a user, if it does not see a user, it returns null. Like we don't have a user here, like it returns null. This valid user will be null, right? So but if we have a user, it will now check. Now bear in mind password. Now let's discuss password. Let's go to our database again. Hello guys, hope I'm communicating. Wow.
Yes, it's you.
Alright, Doing, is that you?
Yes, it's me.
Wow, why are we very few today? Today that we need to, these technologies I'm introducing are kind of, they are big in the markets. If you know how to use your Redis and you know how to use your, to dockerize your application, you're good to go. Alright, now let's look at passwords. Let's see. Now this is the password column, right? If you check this password, these are characters that doesn't make sense. Nobody will want to use this kind of characters as password. So what happens to is it that people when the user signed up, they just create this character as password, because I don't think they will to remember this kind of password, right? These are, so the thing there is that these are not the real content of the password that is supplied. These are hashed passwords, right? In your system, when you build it, when you build your system, you are going to be hashing password to store on your database. You don't store plain text passwords here on the system, right? Where do that occur? Now, before I continue with the login, let's just go and see what's happened to that password. What's happened to the password. Now, password are registered as users' information are stored on the database when they register, including the password, the email, the name, and the password. They get registered when they got stored on the database when they register. And this is the service here. This is the service register method, the method that handles that, and this is the service it's using, the method it uses to do that. So when it's, let's see what happens to this password. This password is plain, is normal. You can use like your name, your password is normal here, but when it gets into this method, it changes. Let's go and see what happens to it. Okay, now we are inside this. If you check here, we are here now. This is where we are now. This service is in users module in services, because we are using the users service in the authentication service, like I said earlier. So now this is it. When the create user method accepts this data, which contains the name, email, and password, now it checks. It also checks that if the user email is already used. Now, if you check this method, what this method does is that it calls this get user by email. It supplies the email. If the email is if there's a user, it returns true. If it's an error, like there's no user, it returns false. So if the email is already used, it returns true. If it is not used, it returns false. So basically that's what that method do. That's what that method does. Sorry. So now it's used. This is the response. If it is used, we throw an error that okay, it's a method, it's an email that already is. These things here there are things that I created them. I just created the object instead of typing the message like a string. All right, instead of doing something like this now, instead of doing email is already is, instead of typing text like this, I just decided to put everything inside an object this way. Let me go there and show you. It's just by and by. So I created this object and I just find out these things here. This is just design type. I like designing my applications this way, right? So then we throw an error if the the email is already used. We throw an error, but if the email is not already used, we need to register this user. Now if you take a look, this is where we do our hashing of the password, right? So we use this package here, bcrypt, right? Bcrypt, we installed it when we are installing our packages here. If you check package.json here, bcrypt dependencies, it is here, right? This is what we use to hash our password, right? So if we go back to, so this is it. We hash the password. This is the plain password, and the resulting value will be the hash password, and it is the hash password we store on database, right? This is where we store our data. We store the information on our database, and after storing the information on the database, we just get the ID, the new ID of the created user. Then we try to get that information, the new user that we created. Then we return it. Alright, this is just to get the new user, and this logic here just to get the new user we created and return it to return it from the function, right? So guys, that's basically what this is where we hash our password, right? In the create user method of the user service class. That's where we hash our password to store it, and it's very important to do that when you are creating your application. So that's basically what it does. So let's go back to validate credential. Now we are trying to log in this user, so we get the email and password, validate credential. I want to validate to see if it is actually the correct person, the login and the email and password. Now we try to get the user. We first check if that email is already on our system. To validate that credential, we first check if the email is already on our system. If the email is not on our system, meaning they are not logged in, they are not registered yet, we return null from this function. But if the user exists, the email exists, we'll now check the passwords. Right now, we need to check the password that they provide and the password from the database. Right, this hash password, this password from the user, if you check, we are accessing it from this user we fetch from the email, from the database, sorry. And this password now is the hash password, now this is the plain password that the user supplied. So we now compare them. You know, this one is hashed and this one is not hashed, right? So if we do like direct comparison, they won't be the same because this one is hashed and this one is not hashed. So we need to use bcrypt. Bcrypt is what we use to hash it. We used to hash the password, so we still need to use bcrypt to compare them to see, okay, this password you hashed, is it the same thing with this one that is not hashed? So bcrypt will tell you. So if you compare, if they are the same, like the hash password is the same of the not hash password, this match variable will be true. It will return true, right? It will return true. So if it's not, it will return false. All right. So if it's not, it will return false. This one will be false. Then if it is false, we'll return null from this value, from this make function. But if it is true, we return the user, the validated user. So let's go back. So this method here is either we return null or the validated user, right? So if it returns null here, we will return undefined because it returns null. So when you invert null, it will become true and return undefined. Here we return undefined from our login, meaning that this person is not registered or the password is not correct, either of the two, right? So now but if the person is validated, like the email here exists and the password is correct, we'll now supply this valid user. Valid user is one. So if the user is authenticated, we now need to create the access token and the refresh token. So we'll supply it to this valid user, supply the two methods, this valid user. So let's go into this create access token and see what they actually do with the valid user and how do they create the access token. So if we come down here, this is it here. So the access token, this is the create access token method. It takes the user, which is the valid user. So look at this, it uses jwt.sign. Now where is jwt? It come up here, jwt, this is JSON web token, right? We imported this package here. We check here, we check our packages. This is its JSON web token. So it's used for encrypting the user. All right, it's used for encrypting the user. Yeah. So we need to encrypt. Now when you encrypt, there's encryption and there's decryption, right? If you check the password we discussed, when bcrypt, you see we use two different packages. Bcrypt, what bcrypt does is hashing, right? And when you hash something, there's nothing like unhashing. There's nothing like unhashing, right? Hashing is kind of like if you have hashed this. Let's say you hashed Chris as a name. You hash Chris as a name to the hash value. There's no way you can, if I give you the hash value of Chris and I didn't tell you that it is Chris that I hashed to that hash value, right? If I didn't tell you that it is Chris that I hashed to that hash value, you will not be able to check to know that it is Chris that I hashed to that value, right? You won't be able to know it. So hash functions are like one direction, they can't be reversed, right? So nobody can look at the hash password and say, okay, I know what this password is, the actual password is. So basically that's what bcrypt does. Bcrypt can only, it hashes, then it compares the two. Like when bcrypt wants to compare, it will first hash this one now that is plain, to hash it to hash value, then compare the two, if they are correct. It doesn't unhash this one and compare it to the plain one. I don't know if you understand. So in hashing, there's just one direction of hashing, like you hash and you store it and everything. But in this creating of token now, token is we need to encrypt the information with a secret key. So when we encrypt or sign an information with a particular key, right, to be able to get that information, when you sign it, you get the signed property, you get the signed token, right. Now to get the information from that sign, the real information from that signed token, you need to use that secret key you use to sign it. You need it to unsign it so that you get the real information. I don't know if I'm making sense. So basically that's what this JWT package do, the sign method, right? So we are signing. If you see the sign method, it takes let's say 3 items here. It takes the object that we want to sign, like the secret thing we want to sign up, we want to cover. Then it takes the password, the secret. If you see, I'm accessing it from the process.env.access secret. That's from the env environment. As string is actually typecasting it to string to make it know that it is string. Then when we do this, then this JWT sign method will now sign this object here with this password. Alright, now this is where this expires in object. This object here is now where we specify that, okay, this token that we are signing, it will expire in so day or so minutes. Here I use 1 day, 1D. If it's 15 minutes, we will do 15 mi. Or is it minutes? I think it's specified minutes. Right? So I'm using 1 day, right? So you specify the day it will the minute, the time it will expire. So when the front end or the user is using the token, if it gets to that 1 day, it will expire. The token will expire, right? So that's basically what we are doing here. Then when we sign the information, we'll get the token. And when we get the token, we'll now return it. That's where we get the access token, right? The refresh token is almost the same. It takes 30 days. It's just the same thing, the same process, the same thing. It takes 30 days, right? I'll return it. But we use different key for the refresh token, right? We use the refresh secrets to sign it. So basically, then that's what we do here. Then when we sign, we get this to token. We'll now return it to the user. That's for successful login. So let's demonstrate this thing now on the front end. So if I come to our login here, if I come here, alright, okay, if I come here, okay, let me try to log in. So this is it. This is the access token, this is the access token, this is the refresh token. Right, so these are the 2 tokens I will get. So if I want to make requests to any of protected endpoints, right, I will use this access token. Okay, so that's basically what the authentication do. So we are through with the with the service. So the DTO. Okay, the DTO, we already know what the DTO do. What the DTO they do here, we already know. Controller. So I think we are good with authentication, right? Should I continue to? I want to look at.
You can move on. Understanding the authentication.
All right. So let's briefly look at service users. So users, the same thing. Let's check the routes. So user is like, after you've logged in and the rest, you've logged in, you've gotten your access token. So we have 3 endpoints here. We have 3 endpoints. Okay, when it's 2:15. We'll go on the break and come back by 2:30. So I think by 2:30. Yeah, we'll come back by 2:30. From 2:30 to 3 o'clock, we should have round up. Then from that 3 o'clock, we'll just go into our Redis, and I believe by then we will have round up. We'll go into our Redis and we'll do our Docker. Right. So this endpoint, and this is an endpoint. I called it .me because we use it to get the profile. You that logged in, you just use it to get your profile. Right. If you go to the front end, let me show you the front end. When you log in as a user, let's log in. Just want to demonstrate that endpoint. If I log in, okay, now this is that endpoint I talk about. Is okay, this is it here. If I click here, this is the endpoint, right? That's me. Check, right? If I refresh, you're going to see the right. This is it. This is the me endpoint. This is it. Users/me, right? So this is the endpoint that fetches the user information, right? It fetches your login information. This is the information I logged in with, email and name, my bio and everything, right? So basically that's what that endpoint does. Now if you check, there's a middleware here, right? Just like that the middleware I discussed earlier in authentication, right? Register this thing. So this middleware is, I call it authentication middleware. What does it do? It checks that a user is logged in. It checks that you are logged in. If you are not logged in, you will be able to access this profile, this endpoint, right? So basically that's what it does. Because why you need to check that you are logged in? Because I need your user ID to fetch your information, your profile for you. So this is like a middleware, an authentication, a guard, middleware guard to check that you are logged in. If you are not logged in, it will bounce you back. So this is it. This is what it does. It will check that you check if you are sending an authentication authorization header. Like here, authorization header is what we send. Like if I come here, let me go to the endpoints. Yeah, get your profile. This is the get your profile endpoint. Alright, this is the endpoint here. The one /me. I will show you what that authentication middleware does here. It checks for something. Now if you come to, you see it doesn't take any information. Now if you come to, let me get this access token and supply. If I copy this access token, copy it, come to this place. So here, when you want to call this endpoint, because it is a protected endpoint, that is, it's not public. Not if you're not logged in, you can't call it. So we need to. This is where we actually do the authentication. You see this authorization here. If you see this token or bearer token information, if you click here, you see other things here, but you choose this bearer token, right? Then when you choose the bearer token, you now provide the access token I just saved in this variable. This access token here it's called variable on Postman. It's called variable, right? It's called variable. So we just instead of putting the value directly, we just define a variable and give it the value here. Then we can now use it anywhere we want to use it in our Postman. So that's what it is. So here now you need to attach in the this is the headers, the authorization header. You need to attach the bearer token, in the header here. So if you attach it here, this is what here this auth middleware will check it. This thing now is checking if you attach it, if you attach that authorization token. It checks the headers authorization, right? Now it now do some splitting, because in that authorization header you are doing, when you attach that authorization, you do something like this. You do bearer, then the token, the access token. Right, so this is the bearer keyword. Just put this bearer keyword, then the access token, right? Then in the add request, that's what it does. Then here we are trying to get this access token. This access token here. We are trying to get this access token here. This is what it's trying to do. It takes this authorization here is this here. Then dot split. Try to split the value into space here. This space between the bearer and the asset token. Try to split it. After splitting it into array, to be splitted into array, you get the, you see bearer here, and you see the access token. This is what it will result to. It will result to this, like after this split. So this token now will be this, then it's access here. We are trying to access the second index, you know, 0. When you do 0 here, 0 will be this bearer keyword, right? Or 1 will be this token here, because in the array you have 0 index, start from 0 index, 0 index, and 1 index, right? So you try to access the token here from the first index, from the second index 1. Then after that, we'll now check if the token is not there, like nothing is there, it means that the user did not send the user is not logged in, did not send the token. We have to throw 401 error of unauthorized. But if we have the token, we need to verify, right? We are now using the JWT. We use JWT to sign it. Now we need to also use the JWT to verify it, right? Then the token and the secrets, right? Remember I told you we use secret to sign, then we need to use secret to verify or to encrypt it, to decrypt it. Then this is after that, whatever we get when we verify it, the value we get here is the authenticated user that we already signed initially, right? So this, what is happening here now, is basically what's happened here. Where is that place? Yeah, what's happening here is the opposite of what's happened here. Yes, opposite of what's happened here. What's happened here, right, is opposite of what is happening here, right? Because here we are signing with access key, but here we are verifying or decrypting or unsigning with the same access key to get this user. So this value here is this value here. That value, that decoded user we see here, is this thing here, is this object here that we signed, is this ID and email that we signed. So basically that's what it is. And now, if it's successful, we'll call next. That is the middleware. So if you call this next, it means it's going to go to the controller proper. Now let's do this. And after calling next, it now comes to profile. That will now fetch the user's profile, right? Okay, sorry, let's go on a break and come back like the next. Let's come back 2:30, right? All right, let's come by 3:30. Then I'll just quickly finish you all this level. Now,
I want to ask you.
right? Go ahead.
I want to ask you. Maybe I'm having an error in my code. I don't know if I should share my screen or maybe you just so I can see it.
Okay, you want to share it now or when we come back?
And I can do it now.
Oh yeah, now share. Let me stop sharing. Okay, you can share. Let's see it. Let's solve it.
you see it?
Okay, it's coming on. Yeah, I can see it now.
Mm, okay, now. Anywhere I see there's this rec user, request a user, giving me this property user is not
Okay, okay. I know the issue. This is what we'll do. Is TypeScript. It doesn't recognize the authenticated user. So all right, hold on. Let me check something. Okay. All right. Let me share my screen so that you see the solution I recommend.
okay.
All right. Come to your. Hold on. All right. Go to your common folder. You have common, right? Common
Alright.
folder. Then yeah,
Yes.
create a inside the common folder. Create types folder.
Okay. Okay. I have types here.
All right. Create another folder called Express. Just Express inside the types.
Okay.
Yeah. Then create this a file called index.d.tx.
Okay.
Index.d.ts. Then define replicate this thing you see on my screen on this screen here. Now I don't think you have this authenticated user here because it's from this other type here, user.type.
I have it because I copied the code. I copied the code already,
All right,
so I
so
have it.
okay, so put this, import it and declare. Do declare global namespace express. Then when you are done, you will now share your screen and show me your TypeScript
Okay.
config. Because if we don't check the TypeScript config, it's going to affect this type.
Alright. Okay. You're naming this express. Alright. I'm done. So I'll share it again.
All right, yeah. You finish Abi exports. You don't forget.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so share your screen. Let's check your TypeScript configuration.
Okay.
First, go there. Check if the error is still there. Well, I don't think it should still be there. But check first.
It's not there anymore. It's not there. I'm not seeing any. So I think it's not there. Yes,
It's no longer there.
I don't think it's no longer there.
All right. Just write compile the TypeScript first. Let's see if you get an error.
How do I do that?
Okay, just go to your package.json. Let me see your commands that you have there. The script package.json. No, down. Yeah. Let's see the scripts. Okay. We'll go to the script. The scripts. Go up. Scroll up. All right. Put write create a new command for the type. Write it type check. Type hyphen check. So put it in quotes now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
because okay. Yeah, yeah, it's already telling you. Yeah, this command here now,
Yeah.
tsc no emit. Yes, basically that's it. You can add a npx to the, like, before the tsc, add npx. It may work like that, or no, just leave it. Yeah, now run a npm run type check. So what it will do is TypeScript will try to compile your project. It will compile it, but it's not going to emit the dist folder. That's what that hyphen no emit means. It's not going to bring out the dist compiled folder. So just to check if everything is okay with your project. Okay, all is good. All is good. Didn't throw any error, so all is good. Yeah. So let's take a breather. 15 minutes will be I think 41, 241. So let's come back by 241, right? We'll
Alright.
finish up the project, then we'll now go into Redis proper. All right, all right. All right, so let's continue. Okay, right. So we are through with the authentication. We're going to the user. We're checking out the user route. Okay, let's go to the route. Yeah. Right. So we've checked. We've seen the me authentication. Then this one, this is to actually view a user, a logged in user. Like, I want to view your profile, not my own profile. I want to view someone else's profile. Okay, this is the endpoint. And this middleware, like I explained earlier, is actually if any route that has this middleware is a protected route. Like, it's no longer public. Like, you must log in before you to access that endpoint, right? For any middleware, that any route that has this middleware. So if you check all the endpoints there, they have it, and even in post endpoints, you see you have it in some of the endpoints. When we look at post, so this basically this endpoint is to view. So if you check, let's go to the controller here, the controller methods. So get user, get profile, update profile, and the rest. Yeah, so basically what this does is it gets the user ID, that the particular user you want to view, because this user ID here is this user ID, this is what we call dynamic param. Yeah, dynamic param means that the endpoint, we can supply any value here to serve as user. So if we check Postman, how it looks on Postman, if we come to Postman, where is the endpoint? Okay, this is the endpoint. Get user. Alright, so we want to get a particular user. Let's load it. It's coming on. Alright, so this is it here. User slash 7. So here I want to view user slash user ID of 7. User with the ID of 7. That's user slash 7. So that user is here. The users, if you see here, we have auth, users, and posts. So that user is inside this main routing, right? So that's that. Okay, so it's user slash param. So we get here this user here is what we access, what we are accessing here in the request. It's the params, we call it params, right? We get it from params. There's also in request we have in Express, sorry, we have request.body, we have request.params, and we have request.query. Alright, let me explain what these three, where we get them from. Request.body is the body, you get it from here. Anything we send in this body part, it's usually under raw and JSON, right? Anything we send here will be accessed as body param, as request.body, right? Anything we send here will be accessed from here, request.body. Then request.params is what we send here on this path, whatever is here. It's part of the parameter or of the routes, right? So like this user /7 here is basically what we are doing, what we are getting from here. Go to the routes of users, is that users slash this is the 7, right? That 7 is this, right? Then the request, then the request.query is after you specify the path. This is path parameter, right? Path param. If you put question mark, then put anything, let's say put anything here. This is query param. This is query parameters. Then why this thing here, this 7 is path param, right? So this everything after question mark is optional. When you are designing your endpoints, and you want to like make some parameters optional, like in that URL, it's either you have it or you don't have it. If you don't have it, there's no problem. So you use query parameters, and to access this query parameter, like if I want to access this thing I put here now, if I want to access this I put here, that URL, to be query dot search. This rec.query.search, this search is the name I put here, is this name here I put here. So if I do that, I will get this name here, OKK, that I put there, OKK, right? So here, if I want to access the value, this value will be OKK, right? Because it is the value that was attached to search query param. I hope you understand that. Then this one, we are going to on this one. So let's continue. So this is get param user ID. Then we use the user ID. We try use this service. We are in the controller. Bear in mind, we are in the controller class. We are use it to get when we get the user ID, we call the user service. We use the method get user by ID method to get the user. If we find the user, if we not find the user, we return a message user not found. Or if we find the user, we remove the password of that user, because we don't want to show the password to the public, because this endpoint fetch everything from the user, from the database. Then we return that user from that user information, right? We return the user information. So if I run this, if I run it on Postman here, let me remove this thing here. Come here. Now this param here is actually here. When you type it, anything you are typing here will be reflecting in Postman. If I put this now, you see this here. If I put another thing here, see it's reflecting here. If I come here and put something here, to reflect at the top here. Right, so that's Postman. But if I uncheck this, it will disappear from here. As you can see, it has disappeared. So I want to get user 7. If I call this endpoint, Let's see what we get. You see, this is the user 7 on the database. So we have viewed this user. So basically, on the front end, on our front end, where is that API? Which API? Which endpoint is that? If we go to our profile, I'm logged in as Christian. Okay. If I want to view this, okay, I don't think. But we didn't consume this. Okay. Okay, we didn't consume these endpoints for that. But you get the understanding, right? So let's get to the next one. Routes. This is actually to update. If I want to update my profile, right? We've discussed this one to get your profile, to get a user's profile, another user to view another user's profile is this one. Then this one is if I want to update, right? If I want to update my profile, let's see the demonstration here on the front end. Here's my profile here. If I come to my profile, I can change anything by saying I can click to save profile updated successfully. If I go here and come back, okay, see profile. This is great. It has been updated. This is the endpoint that handles it. All right, I'm updating my profile. So what it does is that authentication here is also the authentication middleware is here. So it's now it's not a public endpoint, so it must be logged in because we are trying to update our profile. So we'll get the user information that we are trying to update. Now, what that middleware does, it extracts the token. That authentication middleware, it extracts the token, then attach the extract the user, it extract the token, verify the user, that is decrypt the user, and attach it to the request as user object. This is what it does. Sorry, let me show you again. Like this place. Let's go to this function, this method. So this is what it does. After getting the token, it verifies, like encrypts the user, this token. Then in the request, it attaches it as request.user. All right. So if the person is authenticated, you can be able to access request.user anywhere, right, from the next middleware, right? That's basically what it does. So after we get the user, we are trying to update, we get the body, because when we if you check the endpoint on Postman here, to update your profile, you send the body information also, like what you want to update. If you check here, let's let it load. I want us to round up this by, it's already 3. Alright, so if this is the body information it sends, we need to receive, then update. So then when we receive it, we call the user service update method, then we pass it the data we want to update, then it will update. This is the controller. Let's go to the service and see what happens in the service. In the service, it receives the data that it wants to update, validate via the DTO. Then we do some logic here to know the information we want to update. Then we update the user, right? So guys, that's basically this for the user module. Now let's go to the provider. Let's go to the posts. All right, posts. Let's go to the routes. Yeah, so posts, we have the route to posts, we have the gets a particular posts, update a particular post, then okay, yeah. So here, this method is actually to create a post, right? To create a post. If you see the controller method handling it, create a post method. Now as you can see, we have the whole three middlewares we discussed earlier, we have them in this post. And what do they do? Now, this first one, we authenticate the user to make sure that the user is logged in, because before you create a post, you must be logged in. All right, that's what this first middleware does. It authenticates the user, right? Because we need to know the user that is creating the post. All right, this create post validator is now the validator to check the what you are sending, the information you are sending to create the post. What we need to validate it if you are sending the correct information, right? If we check postman here, let's go to our post method. Yeah, the post module. This is create post, right? Okay, it's coming on. Yeah, we go to the body because we are sending via the body. Yeah, this is it. This is what we need to create the post: title and contents of the post. All right. So when you are doing that, you need to also attach in your authorization here header. You need to attach the bearer token. You need to attach bearer token, access token, so that we need to validate what you're updating. Right. You need to make sure this is what the authentication middleware needs. It needs that bearer token. Then validator middleware will validate whatever you're creating. So if we check this validator, it's almost the same thing. All right, title, we trim it, we check, make sure you are not sending empty title. We check if it's a string. Then if any of this fail, we return this message. All right. Then here in the body, in the content, we trim it. Like trimming means if you send in the body here. Let's check the body. So that if you send if you do something like this, like there's space extra white characters, they call them white characters, by the side at the beginning and end of the content. Trim, we remove this extra character here to remove it before storing it on the database. Before we use it, the trim method, that's what it will do. It will trim the content if you have extra space at the end, not in between the characters, just at the end. So that's what it does. Also the same thing with the update post validator. Also, this just validates the post. Then this is actually to catch if there's any error, it will throw the error. So if you did not add this, if you did not put this validate here and you only add this, if there's any error, the endpoint will not catch it. This is what catches the error. This one generates the error, like checks the input, generates the error, and this is what catches the error and throw an error, throw a response that you made a mistake or there's an error in the content you're sending. All right, so these two they work hand in hand. The validator and the validate method works hand in hand. Then when you send, everything is done properly. Then it goes to the controller. We are in the route. We go to the controller. We check the controller. Everything is the same. So we get the data from the body, from the request, body in the request. Then this is the TTO that we're checking it against. Then also we get the authenticated user. When we get the authenticated user, we'll now pass the information to post service method of create. The method is create post. So the data, this is data we are sending and the authenticated user. So what does it do with it? What does this method of post service do with it? So when you receive them, it creates the SQL query. Then we insert it into the database. When we insert, we'll get it and return to the user that it's successful. Right. So this is straightforward. It's very, very straightforward. If I demonstrate it, let's just by send a request. So you see ID 103. This is the contents. Everything. My ID is 7 author. That's the author. And everything. So post created. So it's successful. Right. So go now. Let's check the other routes for on post. This is to get all the posts. All right. Get all the posts. So we'll be catching these endpoints, particular endpoints. But when we get there, we'll talk about that. This is to get. I want to fetch all the posts. So this endpoint, if you see here, we've not had any validator. There's no validator here, so it means it's a public endpoint. Like anybody can call it, whether you are authenticated or not. It doesn't receive any information, any data. So it just fetches. It just, if you call it, it goes to the database and fetch the post for you. So it doesn't care whether you are authenticated or not, or whether you're a user or not, alright, or whether you're logged in or not. So it's just public, everybody can view it. Likewise, this one too, anybody can view this to fetch a particular post. If you've gotten all the end posts, you can now view a particular post, right? So that's what it do. Oh, oh god, connection is lost. Let me pause recording. Okay, so where do you think I did you get this path, the create post endpoints?
Yes, I got that part.
All right,
Yeah.
so you got this part to fetch all endpoints. I mean to fetch all posts
Yeah.
not authenticated, even
Yes.
is public here. Okay. This one too, you got it right to fetch a particular post.
Yes.
All right, so we are good. Then this is, and then the next one is this endpoint to update a post. If you write a post, you can update it, and also it's also protected like the normal create post endpoints. It has the authentication middleware, the validator and the validate method. So they are also protected. It's just to update the post. So then here, now pay attention here. You know, comments. There's no standalone comment. Comment is tied to post because for every comment you want to create, there must be a post that you are creating that comment under. All right. So to properly structure our APIs, I did something in the sense that okay, let me open this place here. Now, if we have, let's say this is the post endpoints. Maybe you want to fetch is a get endpoint. Let me just copy that here to fetch all the posts, right? Now, to get all the comments, to fetch all the comments under this post is this way. This is how I designed it, and this is the way you should design when you are designing your APIs. We go to post. You see, we are accessing post. We want to get comments. So this one is to get fetch all posts, right? Now let me put another one for clarity. This is to get a particular fetch a post, right? Now this other endpoint now is to fetch all the comments for a post, right? For a post, I'll do this. All the comments in a post. This is how I designed it. You see, I'm going to a post, then I'll add comments. This is to fetch all comments for a post. You see how I designed it, right? You see the difference how I designed it. You go to all the posts to get a particular post, then we are fetching the comments for that all the comments for that particular post. You understand? So this is how you should design your APIs when you have items that are attached to another item, and that's those items that are attached cannot exist on their own because you can't just create comments. You need a post to create a comment under it. So this is how I designed the API. All right. If I want, what if I want to get a particular post, not all the, I mean a particular comment, not all the comment. I want to view a particular comment of a user. I will still use. I know you can guess how to do that here from here. Do post, go to the post, comment, then we do what? We now get the comment ID. Fetch a comment of a post. All right, just one comment of a post. So this is how you structure your APIs properly. All right, this is how you structure. You can use this kind idea in other things, like if you are building an e-commerce store, products and others, and every how they are attached. All right, so this is it. So here now, because I want to achieve something like this, right? I want to achieve something like this. There's something I need to do. If you see here, I did router.use, and I put all this posts slash posts ID and comment. That is this here, this thing here, right? I put it and I attach this comment router here to it. Now this comment router is defined in comment module. All right, we'll get there. So, but why do you think I have to do this? I have to do this so that I can properly model this logic I put here, attaching comments to post. All right, that's why I had to do this. It's called merging of routes. Okay, it's called merging of routes. And there's another thing I did again. I think let me see if it's here. Called merge route. Right, yes. If you come to the routes, the comment mode, let's go to the comment module. If we come to the routes of the comment module, if we go up, you see what I did here. Now when normally when you're creating your route, you create your route object. If you see in the comments, this comment now, right? You see merge params true, right? You need to make this because of what I did in the post routes. What did you do in the post route? If you come to the post route, this thing we did here, right? We need to supplement it here, complement it here. All right, to tell the Express app that we are trying to merge these two routes together, like this one will be part of this. Okay, so basically I just say, let me show us so that we'll have a proper understanding. So let's go back to post. Then this is clear. Then let's go to the controller and see how we drafted the controller. So the create method of controller, like it's protected, so you provide the DTO. We provide the body. I will type cast it as the DTO. The user, we get the user, then we send supply it to the post service. All right, the data and the authenticated user. So the post service here, we are now in the service. It takes everything and runs the SQL query. All right, so if we go to the next thing, to fetch all the endpoints, all the posts, this post, we're going to cache these endpoints. All right, so this is it. Just now we are limiting it, page limits. We are paginating it. Sorry, that's the right word. We use limit and page to paginate it, so that instead of fetching all the entities at once, all the posts from the front end, you paginate it so that people can check from page. Maybe you're on page 1, you see 50 endpoint, 50 posts. If you go to page 2, you see the next 50. Go to page 3, you see the next 50. So that's what pagination does, and it is optional. We get it from, if you check, you get it from query. We get it from the query parameter, which is here. If we check, let's check our postman. Go to our postman. Like if we come here, get all posts. Sorry. If we go to get all posts, so as you can see here, this is limit. Limit is if I can add page. page is 1, then put plus this ampersand sign here. Page equals to 1, ampersand limits equals to 5. If you check this, if you check the params here, you're going to see both of them here. Yeah, see page and limits, right? So we have this pagination. So how do we execute it? What do we do? Let's check the service. What service actually do with the page, the limits and page. We go to this. So this is what it does. It does with it. So it calculates the offset. Offset is actually what the query does. The query uses. So offset is like you're telling the query, offset this, like leave this first 5 or leave this first 20, whatever the value is. Leave this first, then go to the next one. Then that's what offset does. Then limit is that the next one you are fetching, just fetch 5. That's the limit. I don't know if you understand. Offset, we tell the SQL query, leave the first 20. If offset is 20, you tell it leave the first 20, then fetch the next 5 if the limit is 5. So that's basically what it does here. So you use this page to your page can be from 1, 2, and so on and so forth. So if you are giving page of 1, page 2, page 3, like in your on the front end, if you are doing page 1, page 2, page 3, so page 1 will be to calculate the offset that SQL query is going to use to offset the query. You're going to do page minus 1, then times the limits, right? That's how many you want to get. Then it does the calculation. If page is 1, this one will be 0, then this one will be 0. There will be no offsets. It will start from the beginning. If page is 1, so it will start from the beginning. But if page is 2, it will be 2 minus 1, that is 1, times the limit. If the limit is 5, it's going to be 1 times 5, which is 5. That's going to leave. You are telling it to leave the first 5 and get the next 5. And this is how we use it in our SQL query. This is the offsets. This is limits and offsets. You put the value here in this question mark, and you put the offsets here. Right. In SQL query, there's what we call join, left join and inner join. It's kind of taking two tables and joining them together to get your endpoints, to get your data from the two joins. So basically, that's what the get post does. This is then get post. This is get post. To get a single post, you just give it the endpoint, the ID of the post. We take it from there and we get it. Use the where clause. Everything will be as usual. We do the join. We join user because we want to get the author of the post and the post itself, and also even the the author of the post and the posts. Because we are joining the two tables together. Then where the ID, we check the ID of the post, get it. Then this is to get all posts, update posts, delete posts, and the rest. So sorry, I don't know. Are you getting the whole thing? Am I moving too fast?
Yes, I'm getting it.
Okay, alright. So DTOs, entities, just to model the, like I said, entity is to model how the database represents how the database store the data. And here we are extending raw data packets here, because if you don't do this, TypeScript is going to complain that when you're fetching the data from the database, it doesn't understand the typing of the data. So we need to extend post typing interface so that to get everything alongside these ones we define there. Then Postman will understand the kind of data it is. So basically that is it. Let's go to comments. Comment is almost the same thing. It's the same thing basically. So you create comments, go to the routes. So like I said, you define your router objects. You create the services here to initialize the controller and the service. Then this router here is protected because you can't create a comment without logging in. You must be logged in before you create a comment. This is to validate the content, what you're typing as a comment. Then when it gets here, we call the controller method and the rest. Then the controller method here, we receive the information. We call the controller service, the comment service, to create the comments. We need the post ID and the information on the user. So let's check what it does with that. Basically, to just create SQL query. These are checks, proper checks to see if the user is valid. Check if the post is valid. If the post exists, if everything is valid, we now create the comments and return the comments created. So then the other ones is just same thing. To get a comment or to get all comments of a post, is it to get all comments of a post? Just so you need the post ID, then provide everything. So guys, this is it. I don't know if you have any question on the code base. If you have any question, maybe on these ones here, these are just helper method, helper classes I created, right? It helps to in the error messages you're sending, right? Okay, then constant is
What
just
about this config?
yeah, config module, right?
Yes.
Config yeah, it's just where we define the configuration of our application. Okay, like in database here, this is where we create our connection pool of the database. We're going to add another thing here, our Redis. We're going to configure our Redis here. So basically, just like any service you have, you put the configuration here. Alright, our Redis, our Kafka that we're going to configure it here, right? So that is that. Then the provider is also the same thing. We're going to see. If I don't worry, you see how I'm going to use the demonstration. So do you have any other question? Let's look at Redis. All right, let's look at Redis. I will have to show a slide. All right, Redis. So what is Redis? Why do you need Redis? Redis, like I said earlier, Redis, whatever we are doing now, we are adding to this code, to this our backend. It's just to optimize the backend, make it scalable, make it portable, make it perform very well, right? So the ideology is that when you go out there to start building application, if they give you a project to work on and you build after building the regular logic, everything, you need to start thinking of how to optimize, like this backend system. How much load can it carry? Can it carry certain amount of load and the rest? So that's when you start thinking about the non-functional component of the application, the scalability, availability, and the rest. And one of the methods of making your app performance is caching requests. What is caching? Caching is when you make a request to fetch data information. When you make a request for your app to give information, like to fetch posts in our app, to fetch posts, right? When you do that, your application when you send a request, your application will run and try and connect with the database and fetch information from the database and send to you. Now imagine where your application is serving millions of people and everybody is trying to get information and fetching, getting that particular request, fetching it maybe to get posts. Everybody is fetching it. At any request, the application will hit the database to get the information. Anytime anybody make requests, it will go to the database and hit, get the information. Everybody is just hitting the database. Now, the connection from the app to the database also has its own latency. Latency means delay, right? So when your app is like that, just normal like that, when there'll be a time when the load threshold, it exceeds the load, you get to the load threshold, it will start becoming slow and it will not be responsive. Like when someone tries to get that post, it will not respond because maybe many people are trying to get it at that same time. It's connecting to database, and database connection has limits, right? Connection has limits. So in that case, what do? There's what we call caching. Caching is that any endpoint, that any resource data that is frequently accessed from the database, and that resource is not, doesn't change every time, but people are getting it, like trying to fetch it from the database almost every time. The best strategy is to cache that resource, cache it in your application, like put it in your application. There's no need for your application to go to the database to fetch it, right? Cache that information in your system, so that anytime anybody comes to get that information, your application will just take it from its system, just take it from there, instead of going to the database, just take it and send, and to be very fast, and the database connection will not be exhausted, right? Basically, that's what it does. So that's what Redis help you do. Redis help you cache any resource that is frequently accessed, and it doesn't change frequently, right? So that's just the general overview. So here, what is Redis? Redis is an in-memory key value data store used for caching, message brokering, rate limiting, queues, and real-time data. Yes, you can use Redis for almost all these things, yeah. But we are concentrating on caching for now, because I think that's the primary use of Redis, to cache. Then all these other stuffs are, can use them some other time when we get familiar with Redis. Alright, so the key characteristics is that it uses in-memory data to store values. In-memory is like your laptop, the RAM of your system. So those data that people frequently access, Redis will store them in the RAM of your system, so that anytime, and any information they store in RAM memory of your system easily is very fast. It's very, very fast to be accessed. So Redis will store those data there, and it's extremely fast, because it's RAM based. To access data from RAM is extremely fast. Used for caching, queues, messages, single-threaded event loop, multiple data store. You can store any type of data type in Redis, right? So let's have a picture. What are we even saying now? Look at this. So we have a client, either the front end or any other server that wants to access our backend server, right? So if they send a request, if you try to get a request, we'll check our Redis if Redis has that data in its store. If Redis has it, we'll get it. If Redis has it, that process is called cache hit, right? Cache hit. It means that we hit a cache, we got it, right? So our app will collect it and return to the user, return to the client. But if that data is not in cache, it's not stored in cache, we'll just boycott Redis and get it from database. That is called cache miss, meaning we do not get it from cache, from Redis or cache. So it's called cache miss. Means we get it from database, and the application will receive it and send it back to the client. So this is just very easy illustration of it. So it's either the information is in the cache or not. If it's in the cache, you will receive it and send it to the user making the request, or the client. If it's not in the cache, we get it from the database. So instead of that, if we remove the Redis here, it means that every request will just be going directly to the database, just as we have here, right? Every request we are currently running is hitting the database until we integrate Redis. So now, why use Redis for ultra low latency? Is very fast. Latency is delay. Your delay will be very, very low. You won't have delay. High throughput, you can send in, when you have low latency, your throughput will be high, like your data being sent will be very high, and the rest simple commands. Versatile system, popular in modern backend architectures. Yes, many systems now incorporate Redis into their system, not only for caching, it's to incorporate into other technology they want to use. Alright, so I don't know, do you have Redis installed in your system? Do you?
Yes, I do.
Alright, so let's just briefly do some let's just understand the whole system basically. So to know if you have it, just the version here. You see, we have the Redis. So when you are installing Redis, you basically have two components of it. You have the CLI, the server, and the CLI, right? The server is the main thing, the main engine running to to do the storing and the everything, to store and get data from the caching. Then the CLI is the command line interface that you use to interact with the server. You give it commands and it calls the server via APIs, right? So let's just briefly do. Okay, so if let's check if we have. Okay, we have the two of them installed, right? Sorry. So if we are to look at the commands that we can just play around with, let's say we can do. Let's go into Redis CLI. So we are now into Redis CLI now, right? You can see we are running Redis now. So if I do, we are into the CLI, so I can set values, key. Let's say I want to set my name. Let me just my name to Chris. See, I got okay. So if I do get my name to return Chris to me, right? So just simple ideas and the rest. It's just storing and getting and restoring data, right? If I try to get it, it will not. It's still here. It will be forever. Like, well, if I don't want it to stay forever, if I do something like, let me store another name. And I put expiration, let's say 60 seconds, or let me do 20 seconds, right? Like I said, this name should expire after 20 seconds. If I try to get name, see, it returns. We can't. It returns. It's still 20 seconds has not elapsed. We're getting it. We're getting it. We're getting it. You see? You see now? It doesn't return the name again. It returns new, right? It stopped here. If you check it, it stopped here. And after it stopped, it starts returning new, because I set the expiration to return to expire in 20 seconds, right? So basically, it's just this is just we are now, this is just Redis storing this. So how do we use it? This is just a brief demonstration. There's other commands we can use. How do we integrate this into our system? How do we use it in our system? What's the benefits, right? But first, before we do that, let's just discuss the type of data you can store on Redis. You can store strings, you can store lists of information like arrays or anything. You can store sets, you can store hashes, you can store many types of data, right? But we'll be storing strings basically on this our project, because the project is not too complex. Project is not too complex, right? Can you hear me? Are you still connected?
Yes, still connected.
All right. Okay. So we have commands to store, different commands to store different data types and the rest. Because of time, we'll just go straight to into the system, right? So let's integrate. Now you can, this is the real application, API caching, REST limiting, job queues, and the rest. So to integrate, we need integrating Redis. We need a package, npm package for Node. When we are integrating it for Node, we can integrate into other programming languages. But for Node here, we're going to use either of this, IO Redis or Redis. So I'm going to use IO Redis. So I need you to install IO Redis in your application. You do npm install IO Redis. let me stop the application from running. npm install io redis. So when we add Redis, we'll need to dockerize. We'll then dockerize it, and so let's check. No, we already have. Okay. Okay, it's installed. So what's the next thing to do now? So we have it. So which endpoints do we cache? Now, okay, wait, let's configure it first. Let's come to our config. Come to your config and create a file called redis.config.ts, right? Have you done that? Hello, doing?
Yes, I've done it.
All right. So come to the file you created. Let's import from the package we installed. So import Redis from io Redis. Then we'll create Redis objects, new Redis. Right, it's going to take an object, and the object will be our configuration. One of the properties is host, right? We're going to give it a host. Then the other one is the ports, because it's a service that runs on network connection, right? So it needs a host and a port to run. And it's the default port for Redis. Every application, just like every application has their own default ports. Like every software that we are, technology we're using that has to do uses network connections. They have their own default ports. Just like database, MySQL database uses 3306 as default for it. Redis has its own, which is 6379 is the default port for Redis. Okay, so because we are running it locally, so we'll give it this IP 1.127.0.0.1. This is the host, local host here. Then let's export defaults, this configuration. So here we have configured our Redis. Our Redis is running, right? It's running on our system, and we have configured our app to access it via this configuration. Now we come to this provider. We just configured Redis. We haven't created anything on it, right? So let's create some things. Like, what are we going to create? We're going to create some methods that will help us to store, to cache our requests, and to get data. Just like I demonstrated in that with the CLI, where I store my name. I store my name and I was able to retrieve my name, right? So we need to create a right method that will help us to be able to do things like that. So here I will come here. I will create the Redis provider. I will call it provider. Even when we use it create our Kafka, we still have to come here and create it as a provider. We create the config for Kafka, and we come to provider module and create a provider for it. So here I will call target module provider here. Create Redis provider.ts. Right, so when this is done, we'll now create the class. Call it Redis service. I don't want to call it Redis provider, I'll just call it Redis service because it's service, right? Alright, so when that is done, our Redis service takes in its constructor, it takes the Redis configuration we created. because it needs the Redis configuration to access Redis, right? So let's give it a type of Redis. So here we define the type, so we are good to go. So let's create the method to set a cache, to cache an item. Okay, so we'll create an async function, an async method sets item. I'll call it set item cache. This is async. Right. So what do we need? We need the item, the key, because when you are caching, we need the key. Like when I demonstrated here, if you want to set when I'm setting, the name is the key. Why this value here is the data I want to cache, right? So this name is the key, then this is the data. So we need the key. Right? The key is type string. Then we need the data, right? So what type would this data be? Let's give it any type first. Then we can set expires. It's a number. Right, so we have these three things now. Okay, so for us to be able to, for this data type, for us to be able to reuse this set item, because we may want to cache post, we may want to cache comments, we may want to cache user, depending on what we want to cache on this system. So this data may be type of post, right, or type of user, right? So we don't, it can be any type. So for us to be able to make it reusable, we make it generic. Come here and add this bracket here, then you come here and make it type T. Right, it means that whatever type we want to, we can now use it for a particular type that we want, for any type we want. Now, this data is going to be an array, because we'll be storing array of information, like we'll be caching array of posts, like long lists of posts and the rest. So, so that is that. Now I want to make defaults. This expires in case it wasn't passed to the function. I want to make it default of 180. 180 means 3 minutes, right? Default 3 minutes. So now we are good with this. I also make let me add return type, which is promise, because we use async, but we are not returning anything, so it's going to be void. Right, so this is it. Let's write our logic now. So what do we do to set? We just call this Redis, that's this Redis connection dot set here, set method. Now set method will take the key that we want to set, and it will take the data, right? But this data here, we need to because we need to store it. It doesn't take type of array. Like we checked, you see we already is giving us highlights of red. So if you see it says argument of type array is not assignable to parameter of type string, number, or buffer array, buffer of array, right, or array the data. Yeah, so what we need to do is we need to stringify, that's to convert this whatever we have here into a string by using this method json.stringify. So when we do that, you see the message is gone. Then the next thing we do is we add the expiration, like we want to expire in, so put the expires. Then this is it. We call the awaits on it because it runs a promise. Then when this is done, we are good, right? So this is the method. Are you following along? Are you typing? Should I hold on for you? Going? So now this is to set. Let's write the one to get, to fetch it back. Then we'll write a get item cache, get cache item. So just like we have it here, we the key is still string. You just need the key. Then we need to make it generic, and we need to specify, because we'll be returning the first. Let's get the cached, the cache item, right? So if I do await dot Redis dot gets key. So this is it now. So we will need to check, because we don't know this key that we supply. It may be in Redis, it may be cached in Redis or not. So this cache here may be something or not, or null, right? So we are not sure. We may not be sure if this key, the data is already cached on Redis. Okay, so here, if we check if it is, if we have it, right? If we have a cached information, a cached data, we have to pass it back. You know, when we are storing it, we stringify it here. So when we are returning it now, when we are getting it and returning it, we have to pass it back to the data it was before, right? When we return it, when we store it. So here I'm going to do promise. So it's going to be type T, but it will complain because this may be null or not. It can be that we have nothing here, as you can see, it's string or null. So here means that whatever we are returning must also, you know, type here, then can do null if there's nothing, right? So if we have something, we'll return it, but if we don't have, we'll return null, right? So this is it. We have method to set cache an item, we have the method to get it, right? So let's integrate it into our app. So how do we do that? All right, so let's look for our endpoint. Let's cache the post, the post endpoint, the endpoint to fetch post. So we'll go to now let me check where we are appropriate to cache it. Alright, so we are here. Let's go to our post services. Our post service. This is our middleware here. Alright, because we don't need to add it. We don't need to put it in controller. It's in the service. We need to add it because service is where the logic goes. So now this is it. Let's cache our post endpoints, our post service. So how do we do that? First, we need to generate the key, right? We need to generate the key that we want to store against the data. So how do we do that? You can just create cache key. What do we create? Like, what do we use to create the key? Yeah, it's this method is arbitrary. Like, you can, it's depending on how you want it, how you want to do it. So because it is post, I want to cache post. We do post, right? Then because we are also, you know, the database, we are querying the database using the page and limits, right? I also want to cache it because they are directly related to the query we are sending. So I'll do page, and it will be I want to add the page value. So if page is 1, it will be 1. Then limits, semicolon, then the limits. Alright, so this is the key I want to use to cache the data that I'm going to get from here. So it means that for if the page is 1 and limit is 10, for example, that particular data will cache it. So anytime someone sends a request for a page of 1 and limit of 10, it is that particular data that they want to get it and serve to them. But if they are looking for page 2 and limit 10, it's not the data. Will not give them the cache data. We'll go to the database and get it. Right. So until if you cache that particular data again, we can serve them when they want it again later. Alright, so this is it. So let's import, this is the key. So let's import our service, our controller Redis service into our post. So how do we do that? You just come here in the constructor, you do private Redis, right? So let me call it Redis service because it's a service class so important. Then I will type it of Redis service class. So if I do that, it is here. I can use it. So if I come here, so because of this change, this extra thing we added here, we need to go check all the places we instantiated, initialized post service class, and supplement, add this extra thing to their constructor. So I've gotten it. Let's come here, cache key. Then let's get the cache post. Cache post. This service dot get cache item. It only takes the key, cache key, right? So it only takes the key. So now cache post may be empty. Maybe we haven't created a cache for when we first make the request. We haven't created a cache for the post, so we need to check if it is empty or not. So we do that by cache post. If it's empty, if it's not empty, we will return it. So if it's not empty, we will return it. So we don't need to go to database. We don't need to access the database. So we are having a complaint here. Cache key. This is missing. Okay. Sorry, this is array. Return the array of information. So we are good here. So, but if cache that we don't have the data cached, means we just go directly to the database, fetch it from the database, query the database, fetch it from the database. Now, when we have fetched the posts here from the database, we need to cache it, right? So that next time we'll be able to serve it from the cache, right? So to do that, we just call the Redis service like we did. Then we call the set cache item. Then let's give it type post. Then here we give it the cache key here. Then we give it the post. Now this post here, this post that is fetched, that was fetched. Then when we do that, we are good to go. That means that this endpoint is cached. So when you do this, you have successfully cache these endpoints, and the request will be very fast, right? So let's make correction based on this extra dependence we added to the post service. So we come to this place. As you can see, it's complaining here. It needs the Redis. So what we do is we import the Redis class, the Redis service. I mean, Redis service class. Call it Redis service. You can call it any name you want. Call it, then instantiate it here. Redis service imported. Then we add it here, or add it to this place. And Redis is complaining it needs its what? It needs its the Redis configuration. So if this Redis configuration, right? This config here we use. That's import it here. If you check the class, if you check the Redis provider class, it takes the Redis configuration, right? So we need to provide it for it here. So let's check other places where post services use here. The same thing here. So we'll create the Redis service. Give it. Then need to also import, get the Redis configuration and give it to. So I think that is that. Yes, we are good to go. So when you do this, it means you have successfully cached Redis on your system, right? You have successfully cached Redis on your system. So let's run our application. Is Redis running on your system? It's 4 o'clock. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's running, right?
Yes.
Alright, so I think let's just do Redis today. Do you still have time? I'm thinking of like introducing Docker to us. Can we do that or tomorrow? I will do. You say?
I don't have much time anymore.
You don't have much time?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Then tomorrow, let's just discuss, finish up this Redis then. Let's say the next, there's something I just want to show us on this Redis also. So npm, let's start our backend. Npm run dev, Redis should be running. Our application should be able to connect to Redis and let's see if our server will run. There's no issue. So I'm waiting to see my file. Alright, our app is running. Let's check if what we did now to confirm if we are actually if Redis is actually working or doing what we did is true or not. Let's console log the data we cached. Let's console log. So here, if we see data, let me console log cache posts. I'll call it alright. So I want to console log the cache post that I will be getting. let's restart the application. Is restarted. Okay, we've started. So let's go back to our app, our postman, and get posts. Yeah, get posts. I want the limit to be 50. Let me make the limit. I want to fetch 50 of the. So if I send requests, okay, yeah, we got it. Let's see our post. You see cache post here. This console log cache post is null. That means we didn't get any cache, any post that is cached. So let's try again to see if if you didn't get any cache post, it fetches it from database. Then after fetching from database, you set the cache, right? We cache it on the data on Redis, so that next query we're going to see it, we're going to cache it. So if I run this query again, the same query, nothing changed. If I run it again, you see very fast now. And why is it fast? Because if you see now, see everything is cached. The thing is cached is here. This is it. Console log everything is 50. So it's going to be many. It's going to be many. So it's very fast. Yeah, this is it. This is the beginning. Cached post is an array of all these items. So our Redis is working. So I hope your own too is working. Right? Your own too is working. I'm going to update push to GitHub. Then there's something else I want to. Do you still have time doing? I just want to demonstrate because you still have time, like little time.
Yes.
Okay, so now we don't, like, you may not be noticing the difference between this cache, like the importance from this request I made there. So I'm going to create an endpoint to test Redis, for you to see the improvement it makes to your API, right? So I'm going to create an endpoint that is going to take long to execute, to return data. Then I'll test it when it is without Redis and when it is with Redis. You're going to see the difference, and you understand, you appreciate the concept of Redis. So let me just quickly create right. So let me come here and create a service inside this post. We'll call it async method of test Redis. So test Redis is going to take a number, a count. It's going to return promise of, this is an async promise of let me say results. Give it object. Result will be number because we want to do calculation. So there's something I want to do. So test Redis, I want to cache. This is it. Let's leave this to tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be discussing because this test I want to do, I need it to pay attention for on it. So let me just leave it for today. Tomorrow I'll just run it up. Then we'll continue with Docker and right.
I'm having some errors. Just let me see through some of the code so I can post your service.
All right, share your screen. Let's resolve the error before you leave. Let me stop sharing. Share your screen. Let's resolve it. I need you to get the app running so that you can do something. Okay, so this is it. Go to that get item cache. where we define it. Yeah,
Where we define
go to it.
provide this.
Yeah, yeah. So that T, put brackets by its side to make it an array, just like in data. No, 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 not there, not there. In the return, in the promise return. No, no, in the promise, that promise here.
Hmm?
Yes,
Yeah.
there, yeah. You see how, yeah, you see how it looks at that, yeah. No, attach the two of them together. Yeah, curly bracket. No, no, not
Okay, curly.
square bracket. Sorry, square. Square bracket. No, square bracket. Sorry, I said call it square. Good. So that's Naira. Alright, so pass it the Redis service.
How about this?
So post service is now using a Redis service in its constructor in addition to the pool item there. So attach Redis service inside the pool service constructor. Post service. No, look at post service. No, line 19. Your line 19. Line 19. Put command. Add a Redis service to it. After the pool.
Yeah,
After
Redis.
Redis service. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And check the same thing also. Yes. Okay, I don't think there's any other issue. So have you added the caching?
So how would I do that?
Yeah, let's cache the get post endpoints. Get post, go to the service, post service. Yeah, post service. Yeah, this place, yes. Okay, it means you have done it now. I can see you've done it. Get all posts, you have already cached it. No, get all posts. You have already cached it. Yeah. You have already cached it. Yeah. So scroll down, let me see if you updated your cache, if you didn't get it. Scroll down. Okay, good. Okay, you added your time 3, yeah. Okay, so you can test and see the difference. You can even consolidate the cache if you get cache pools. So there's something I want you to bear in mind, right? So now, what do you think will happen now? If you cache our post and a post, maybe they edited a post or they added another post. Someone created a post. What do you think will happen? What do you need to do to our cache?
I understand.
Okay. Now, one thing about caching of data, like we are doing now, caching it so that we'll access the database again for that time. Is what if somebody creates extra data on database? It means we need to update our cache. We need to make our cache become stale. The cache we have on the system will become stale. So there's something called invalidating of cache, like it's just deleting of the cache that you have. So since we are caching this post here, if they create a post or delete a post or update a post, we need to invalidate our cache that we have here. You understand? understand? We need to invalidate a cache. So tomorrow I'm going to write a function. We're going to continue from here. That's be the final phase of Redis caching. We're going to invalidate cache so that when there is a new cache, it won't be that our own will still be having the old cache in our system, in our Redis, while there is new cache. So we need to invalidate it, like delete it and get the new one. You understand? So that's called cache, invalidating the cache, so that you get a new one that is being added. So we're going to do that tomorrow, by God's grace. Alright, Doi, it's nice having you around. Just practice with the code. I'm going to push what I have here. You know the GitHub repos, right? You know the GitHub repos.
Yeah.
So I'm going to push it, and even the one I wanted to do now is already encoded there. I will push it there. You can just have a look and see what I was trying to do. Then tomorrow we'll just deliberate on it. Then when we're done, we do Docker tomorrow. Then when we Dockerize, then I think we're almost done. Then next week will be the final week. By next week, I will going to introduce us to Nest.js. Introduce us to Nest.js. Then I'm going to convert the new code to Nest. Alright, Dwayne, thank you very much.
Alright, thank you.
Have a lovely weekend. See you tomorrow.